Right, today is the day the Audi goes in and gets the gearbox done. So early start, getting her in, and more news later. Dropped off at the garage, and report back later.
1 week later.
Right, waiting to be picked up. Car's ready. I'm hoping that fixed, because it wasn't just the gearbox, it was a flywheel as well that was knackered. Quite an expensive repair. I'm going to go more into discussing about that on this. Yeah, I'm just glad I'm getting it back, and hopefully it's going to be a good car for, well, it's always been a good car. It's been quite solid. I hope this improves and takes away some of the problems I've been experiencing, especially over the past 6 months. Right, so she's back on the road. Wow. She's a completely different car. Completely different car. The problem that we had with her, I refer to her as her because she's an old girl, is that it wasn't just the gearbox that was broken. It was a combination of a few things: the differential bearing and the flywheel. The car responds much better. There's no juddering setting off. There's no delay in the power. And in all three modes, in standard auto drive, in standard sport mode, and in manual, she responds beautifully. It feels like a completely different car. And there's a slight whine, but not a bearing whine. It's like a power whine. It's like charging up and ready to rock and roll. It's completely different. It's completely different. I mean, it doesn't feel, it feels much more smoother. It feels more like a new car. I've never really felt anything as smooth as this for quite a long time. Actually, it is a completely different car compared to what it was a week ago. She's just very, I don't know, very thingy, but just accelerating. The response is sublime. It feels so smooth. I'm quite speechless at how bad this car was before I replaced the gearbox. You know, so for all you other Audi B6 Avant owners with a Multitronic gearbox, what I would advise you do is, if your car starts juddering before there's a bearing noise, I would suggest changing the flywheel in it. And these, even though it is an automatic gearbox, it still has a flywheel. Now, some people call it a torque converter, others call it what it is, which is a flywheel basically. I would get it checked out and I would get it replaced. A flywheel for a 130 PD with a Multitronic gearbox code GJA, is over 300 quid, and that includes the bulk kit as well. I would get it changed. I would also check the diff, excuse the speed bumps. I would check the diff on the gearbox. So a standard test on that would normally be to just turn the I've forgotten what they're called, but they're on the gearbox and they turn around. I'm not a mechanic, but I understand enough for cars to know what's what. But I would turn the bits that attach to the drive shaft, and then literally, if there's a roughness or if there's a play in it, then chances being that the diff bearing is probably damaged, or the drive bearing, as some people call it. So I mean, I've gone to have a look at the gearbox. The original gearbox was in this, and there was a lot of play in the drive bearing, as well as there being, you know, the roughness. I tried turning the spindle in the gearbox because you have the cog spindle which attaches to the engine. That literally was seized. I could not turn that for love nor money. So there was a lot of damage to that gearbox. There will be a video at a later date of getting the original gearbox refurbed and looking at other jobs and pieces. I'm now going to drive back and just enjoy the smoothness of this car. And also I'm going to go through the cost of what I have literally spent to get this right and get this to a standard that is much more livable. It wasn't manageable in the first place, but in truth the gearbox was on its last legs, and I didn't really want to do any more damage to the car or its components on top of what already damaged I've already paid to have replaced. So I'm going to go more into that, more detail later. Okay, so let's talk about the costs. I'd already bought the gearbox for 200 quid and had it delivered for 330. Obviously I wasn't able to get it done until this past week, so I'll go through the other costs that are included. So to replace the gearbox itself, the garage charged me, I think, just over 500 quid to replace the gearbox, and just basically the labour really to do the job. It also needed a flywheel and bolts, because when you're replacing the flywheel you have to replace the bolts as well. Those bolts and flywheel came to £340. You know, at least we've got it done. And as well, upon thinking about the issues and the process of the issues, flywheel was a good answer anyway. Obviously gearbox oil, now this is a thing that really tripped me up. I should have thought more about the gearbox oil side of things, because obviously when you replace a gearbox you put fresh oil in just to make sure everything works in there, otherwise it'd just be a waste of time. So the gearbox oil came to £81 in total, so that works at about nearly £10 a litre. Now if you get your gearbox oil replaced at garage, you're probably looking upwards towards £25 a litre. So, and I mean, what I mean by garage is a dealership. Obviously this is a private garage and they've done it at a much cheaper price. So yeah, so that works well as it is. Then as well, the labour. So the labour in total, they've charged another 400 odd quid because of the flywheel, because obviously that would incur extra labour costs, and obviously the gearbox oil service, if you will. So all in total it's cost me 1,052, and that's including the VAT. for that sort of price, it's less than what the car's valued at, so it was worth doing anyway. It was long overdue doing. I've had this problem now for the past, progressively getting worse over the past 7 years, and you could argue, listening to me saying that, going, well, why didn't you do it sooner? Well, as we know, we live in a world where finances are restricted, and you know, I've had to keep costs down anyway. This car is a workhorse, so I've needed it doing, otherwise I would have been paying 3 times that for another car anyway, so this was basically the best option. So yeah, so I'm quite happy with what I've paid. I'm quite happy with the fact that it's now been done. I wish to give credit to I think Duke Breakers in Sheffield, or Duke Motors, sorry. They've managed to source me the right sort of gearbox, and they literally, you know, liaise between each other to make sure it was the right part. So I'm quite happy, I'm more than happy with their service and the fact that I've got a gearbox. Also, I wish to credit Brackenash Garage in Leyland. Great bunch of lads. They don't normally deal with automatic gearboxes, but because I brought them a gearbox just to replace instead of repair, they were more than happy to do that. Obviously, it was a learning process, and from what I believe, it was a bit of a pain in the backside because, as you know, the gearbox is part of a stress area, and it's the gearbox faces like as if it was a rear wheel drive. I think it's transaxle. I don't know if I'm correct on that point, but the gearbox goes towards the rear of the car, not sideways as what normal front wheel drive cars are. My car's not a quattro, it's a 2-wheel drive, so you know, that makes sense on that. So that's the gearbox done now. Other projects now left to do on the car. I want to give it a remap, just an economy remap. Again, I mean, it's already got one, but I think it just needs redoing because I am losing a little bit of top end on it. But in terms of, like, you know, low end to middle end grunt, it's absolutely bang on. So just to get maybe a little bit more squeak out of it is something I'm looking into. In terms of other mods on the car, I'm going to be developing sort of an aero kit for underneath, because as you know, my car still has the plastic covers underneath. So what I'm considering is adding sort of air guides and what have you towards key areas underneath the car. One, to help with the flow underneath the car, but also as well to aid cooling in terms of brakes and stuff like that. The aero fins on the top of the car are working, as I've already discussed. It's my average has gone from 45 to 48 as motorway, or as extra urban as they call it. So that's improved. Obviously the economy remap will get that up a bit more. I'm going to perhaps redo the side skirts and perhaps do them a little bit more of a tidy job, just to maybe capture, I'm not losing any air to surface sort of stabilization, but it's doing the job. The front spoiler, the S4 spoiler is doing the job, but I am going to put a sport spoiler on, because eventually at some point I would like to go to Nürburgring, not necessarily go hot lapping, but just kind of try all these mods and see if they work properly, efficiently. My rear, you call them canards, but I just call them plastic bits on my bumper. They're helping with the stabilisation of the car going down motorways, so the efficiency is there, aero efficiency is there with that. Other jobs, I'm going to be swapping alloys over. I've got a set of summer wheels. They do need 2 new tyres, and they do need a proper refurb, but they are still decent. They are a wider wheel as well, so it's just to get some idea of maybe what the car would look like on a nice squat. It's already 40mm, it's not going any lower, it's staying as it is there. You know, so it's all now about the maintenance of the car and improving its fuel economy and efficiency. The car is a diesel, so you could argue, well, it's efficient enough. Yes, it is, but you can always improve things without going stupid. So that's what I'm looking into. With view to other J-Tux cars, there isn't just one car in the household. There is two. There's my partner's Vauxhall Corsa C. I'm going to be doing some, again, experimenting with aero mods, experimenting with efficiency, and also as well improving the car in terms of its handling and sort of its durability. As you know, this is about living with cars over 20 years, and I will be discussing about, with that car being an automatic and being unleaded, since we've gone on to E10, I want to open a discussion with regards to whether E10 is helpful for older cars or not. I know we're in a world where we're meant to be going greener, but end of the day, if you can't afford to keep buying a new car to keep up with modern trends, regardless of what incentives the government offers, buying an older car because they were built to last is your better option, regardless of what perks and quirks they have. So yeah, that's that. So with view to advice on my car, right, there's a few things we can cover in this. The first thing is, if you have a Multitronic gearbox, there's things you got to look out for. Juddering upon setting off. It's like it does like a little rev blip. So if you've got cruise control on and you're at 50 mile an hour, sometimes the odometer, basically your rev meter, it just jumps by about, I think, 0.2, 0.4 on the revs. I know revs go up at every 1,000, so we'll say 200 revs, something like that. I noticed this on the motorway in a what do you call them? Basically the new motorway upgrades that they've done here in the UK, where literally I've got 50 mile an hour and my rev should normally sit at roughly about 1500 RPM, and I've noticed that it was just blipping just 200, 400 now and again on the revs, and it wasn't stable. So look out for that as a telltale sign, because that usually is a sign of your flywheel or your clutch pack in your gearbox. So I would just keep an eye on that as well. If you see that, I would advise to change your flywheel straight away. The reason why I suggest flywheel first, that's the heaviest and most expensive part, or potentially can be if it's not looked after. If it turns out to be your clutch pack, 9 times out of 10, then your gears don't normally register, don't synchro properly. So usually with revs bouncing or sounding like you're over revving the car to set off, it's always the clutch, always the flywheel. So I would advise doing that. With the Multitronics, they do have a flywheel. Some people call them torque converters. It looks the same. It's all the same to me personally, and a few mechanics that I know of pretty much say the same thing. So I would recommend get that checked over. In terms of, let's say, other possible issues with regards to juddering and whining noises, on my gearbox I had an issue with the differential bearing because of the flywheel not allowing, the gearbox to work how it should, or not controlling the torque correctly as it is. So when you've got your gearbox, if you take off your drive shafts, I would check it's like a drive bearing, but it's like a plate that basically bolts onto the drive shaft. Check the drive bearing, and if there's any play in there, chances being that your differential bearing is either gone or on its way out. Also as well, obviously with playing that can also lead to your drive shaft, because if you remember in the previous vlog, I had my drive shafts changed, both sides, where literally the inner drive shaft boot had split and the outer CV had split, and damaged the bearings in the process. So it's best to check your diff bearing on your gearbox, otherwise you will need to replace your drive shafts as well. So all in all, it's been a very expensive couple of months. I'm not going to lie about that. The drive shafts cost about 700 quid replacement and labour. And then obviously the gearbox, because my gearbox is gearbox code GJA, there is a GWA, and then there's another one which I can't remember the code off the top of my head, but I believe that's the Quattro. Basically the GJA was the development Multitronic, from what I believe. I could be wrong here. And you know, they ironed out the problems, and then usually the recalls and the updates were really applied to the GWAs and the later Multitronics, then the S-Tronics, and then obviously they got it all refined by the time they came out with DSG. So yeah, that's all this with the gearbox. So I would recommend, and I'll just repeat again, if you see on cruise control your revs bouncing or fluctuating, chances being it's your flywheel. Not failing that, not your flywheel, could possibly the early stages of your clutch pack. So I would advise you see a mechanic and get it replaced. For the 130 PD car, the flywheel for mine was £340. That included the bolt kit as well, because when you replace the flywheel you have to replace the bolts. So I would advise you get that checked out, because it will work out far cheaper than having to replace a gearbox. Other than that, just completely happy. Trying to find a GJA gearbox is like rocking horse muck. So I would advise, if you do have gearbox code GJA, you find that code in your owner's manual or your service book, where it's in a sticker, and it just basically tells you your engine code and gearbox code. Once you know them, then you know what you're looking for. So yeah, so that's the gearbox issue resolved with the Audi. I've got more content videos coming, not just on my Audi but on my partner's car, but also as well I'll perhaps be doing talks about other people's cars as well as going to car meets, car shows and stuff like that. Anything that is car related, I'm planning on covering, and hopefully you guys join me for the ride. Whilst I'm on the subject, please comment, like, subscribe. If I've maybe got a little bit of information wrong, correct me if you will. I'm only going off from experience of working for VAG. I've worked for many different garages, to be honest. I mean, I've been in the motor trade over 20 years. I'm not a mechanic, but I've driven various cars as site driver, as a parts delivery driver, as well as worked in parts. So I am familiar with, you know, some things and what they do or what they're supposed to do. So yeah, I hope I've been of some help, and I hope I've been of some use. Again, please comment, like, subscribe, and just spread the love. My next two videos, I'm going to be doing a why you should buy an Audi, a 20-year-old Audi A4 B6 or B7, and then I think the one after that I'm doing a prep for Shedfest. So I've got a challenge coming in the next week, getting my car ready for Shedfest. Yeah, could have my work cut out there. Anyway, thanks a lot. Please comment, like, subscribe. In a bit. Bye.
Lagging whilst gaming? Out of steam after a long day at work and you want to go out raving? Or just need something to get you through your grueling day? Dubby Energy, a healthier alternative to the off-the-shelf brands. Dubby is packed full of the important aminos and vitamins that canned energy drinks don't provide. This product doesn't contain artificial additives and is also sugar-free, maltodextrin and keto-free. One tub on average is cheaper than consuming 2 cans per day of the off-the-shelf brands. Order your WNG via their website at w.gg and use my promo code VaderMonkeyJ to get yourself 10% off your order. Keeping yourself energized doesn't have to be unhealthy.